Hello and welcome to this Motzei Shabbos edition of Iyun with Benzion on Daf Yud in Chagiga. We're dealing today with the concept written in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, we'll start on Yud Aleph. The Mishnah says, Heter Nadarim Porchen Ba'aver. The concept of Heter Nadarim, that you matter a neder, you take a neder, that's Porchen Ba'aver. It's considered something which is flying in the sky. I mean, not attached to this ground, to the world at all. It has nothing to rely on. Hilchos Shabbos, but through three other things, Hilchos Shabbos, Chagigos and Ilos, Harim Keharen Atlim B'Sara. These are things which are like mountains that are hanging by a hair. Now, it's a little interesting, this lashon of hanging by a hair. Hair, what is a hair going to do? I mean, the hair is going to break. Yeah, a hair is hanging up, a piece of hair. I don't care if the strongest hair from India. I don't know whether they grow really strong hair in India. I know the women there have strong hair. I don't know, wherever hair you have, you take from a yak, the strongest shaitel in the world is not going to hold up a mountain. The mountain's going to detach from it. So what's the difference between Heter Nadarim and Haran Atlim B'Tzara? And it really relates to our Masechta, because one of the things is Chagigos. How do you know the Shalmei Chagiga? How do you know Shalmei Chagiga? The Gemara on Yudam and Beis tries to figure out whether Shalmei Chagiga really means an actual korban, which is the real intention of it, or actually means a celebration, a big celebration. What's a big celebration on Yom Tov, on the Shalosh Regalim? So in order to understand this better, I want to explain that the difference between Heter Nadarim and the other three things. The Heter Nadarim, Porchen Ba'avir, is something which is floating in the air. It's actually the opposite. Porchen Ba'avir, because the Gemara already brings proof. The Gemara starts on Tanya. He says they have what to be Salmech on. He says, meaning it's like basketball. Like you bounce the ball, it comes back, goes in the air, like gravity we have in this world. Porchos ba'avir is flying in the air, but it's going to come down with gravity. And that's when the Gemara actually is medayik. The Gemara brings from Shmuel that says that it is yesh lam mashes mechu, and the Gemara is no pircha on Shmuel. Shmuel says Heter Nadarim have mashes mechu. It says explicitly in the Torah. Lo yachal dvaro, he can't be mechal. He makes a nether, he can't make a chul, and he can't negate what he said. But acher mochlan though, the diak is who lo yachal, the person who took the nether. But a basin can come and find a petar charata, and they could be matter the nether. It's pretty clear in the Torah. It's like a basketball. You bounce it, it'll come back. There's gravity in the world. Porchos ba'aver is not more than what we're gonna have. Now the next thing, other things. Hilchos Shabbos, Chagigos and Ilos, Harim Keharen Atlim B'Sara. They're like mountains that are hanging by a hair. And then it says other thing. Dinin Avodos, Hataros, Meos. Dinin is talking about Dinin Maminas. Now, you're right. It talks about a lot of things. A lot of parts of Mishpatim talks about different Dinin Maminas, but there's the entire Masechta. Maseches Baba Kama, Baba Metzia, Basra. They are long Masechtas. They are one Masechta really together. Masechta Nezikin, which totals over 400 blot, making the biggest Masechta in Shas. And you're gonna tell me they have it's so clear from the Torah, all these halachos. You need a Torah Shabbat Peh. Without Torah Shabbat Peh, you'd be absolutely clueless, right? The Torah Shabbat Peh is impossible to decipher from just the Torah Shabbat Peh alone. What does the Gemara mean? The Mishnah says Gufi Torah. It's explicit in the Torah. It's not explicit in the Torah. All these things, Tuma and Tara. There's a whole Seder of Tyros, whole Seder of Mishnayos. We don't have Gemaras on them. There's so many laws about Tuma and Tara and Torah Shabbat Peh. So why are these things? So I want to focus on the reason it says Sarah. Sarah means a hair. Hair's breath. Hair. It's called splitting hairs. Splitting hairs is when you analyze something. Splitting hairs is you analyze it so well to the core that you're able to find a distinction which makes the underlying reason you found out to make it significant. Splitting hairs, split hairs, chakiras, lamdas, it's all splitting hairs. And that's really what these things are over here, is that Shabbos, Me'ilah, and Chagigos, Hilchos Shabbos, you might say 39 times in the Torah, Lo Sesem Malacha, but there's a whole Masechah Shabbos, 157 blot, which talks about all the details of Masechah Shabbos, of Malacha Shabbos. You have no idea what the Malachas are. There's a Mishnah and Shabbos says 39 Malachas Shabbos. We have no idea what they are. So it just means, all the Mishnah is saying, it doesn't mean that it talks about them in the Torah less than Dinei Maminas. It's not really true. I mean, it's the idea is that it's dependent on hair splitting. And that's the Gemara brings. The Gemara says that you might think, it says Loas Asiya, don't do malacha on Shabbat. You might think if you do the malacha on Shabbat, regardless of what your intent is, it comes along the Gemara and says that's what it means. Like Rav is teaching, it depends on your intention. And even though normally the malacha is chafira to dig a hole, but if you dig the hole with the intention of just needing it for the dirt, you're pater midorais. You're not chayiv in a korban. You're not chayiv skila. That's a big chiddush. And that's Me'ilo also. Me'ilo also, the Gemara's maskana on Yud Aleph and Aleph at the end. The Gemara's maskana is it's talking about there's a difference that the whole concept of Me'ilo is that you did it b'shogeg. You didn't know you were using consecrated money to buy something, buy a soccer ball, whatever. That was the example. To buy something chulin, but you should have known. You should have been more careful. And if you were careful, then you would have known. So it tells you it's talking about a shogeg, but a type of shogeg that you could have been more careful, and that explains also the halacha, which are included B'Sara, which talks about a shliach, someone who sends someone to buy something with hektish money. So it depends on if you remembered or not. If you remembered, then the shliach becomes chayiv. It's a kind of an interesting halacha that's dependent on splitting hairs. Splitting hairs. If he could have been more careful, kind of been more careful. We didn't know that in Sakhamila. We wouldn't know that it makes such a big difference in the Malachas Me'ila, and that's also by Chagiga, our Masechta. The Gemara says maybe Chagiga means a big celebration. According to Tozos, it means to dance. You're chayav to dance, the whole thing. And the Gemara says, the Maskana, really we learn from Midbar, Xera Shava. That really means a korban, bringing a korban Chagiga. But the Gemara says, Atluin Basara. That really is because Divrei Torah, Divrei Kabbalah, Yalfina, we don't really learn the correct interpretation of Torah Shvachta from the Viyam. So at the end of the day, if we're going to connect this idea back that it's like splitting hairs over here, so how could we say that by Chagiga to fit it in with like we're saying by Shabbos, by Shabbos, and by Me'ila, it depends on Ibai Le'liyune, Lo Ibai Le'liyune. So you'd say the same thing by Chagiga over here, that even though really the Maskana Gemara is Chagiga is a mitzvah to bring a korban, but it's really it's really dependent on splitting hairs. It's not the bringing of the korban really. It's the celebration that comes out of the bringing of the korban. It's the celebration that comes from bringing the korban, and that is splitting hairs because nafkamina, when there's no base on Mikdash, there's going to be a mitzvah to dance, to celebrate, to balloons, streamers, because that's Hara Tluin Basara. You split hairs. It's about your intention over there. Your intention is to celebrate with the animals. For example, if you bring a korban and it brings you no sadness, you're a vegan or something like that. I don't know. I'm just giving a hypothetical example. I don't know if this would be true or not. You're a vegan, something like that. You're a vegetarian. You don't like to eat meat, so maybe you wouldn't be Mekayim the mitzvah, because the idea is that it's hair's breadth, splitting hairs. It has to bring you to a celebration. Harbo B'Simcha, like Rashi says, that is mitzvah Chagiga. It's a celebration. That's the Ikra mitzvah. We're going to try to bring in some celebrations the coming days.